Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming. People will still roll in a little bit later. If not, it's okay. It's not the total number of people here, it's the quality of people for stuff like this. So my name is Ron Chinzer. I am a police officer. I am not a model or an actor, as much as you may believe. But I am out of the Gang Prevention Task Force. I do work for the Toronto Police Service. There's some other officers here as well. The reason that they're here is they're just here to hear back from the community, being yourself, as well as provide you some information, especially if you have it for your particular community. We have some officers here that are from your neighborhood, and we can always draw on them. But today, to give you a rough outline of what we're aiming for, is I'm going to spend about 30 minutes just kind of going over a framework of why we're here, what exactly the Gang Prevention Task Force is, and what you can do about it in terms of how you can impact your local community. And then we have another officer that'll talk to you in particular about youth mental health and how to create a safe space and talking with some youth. And then we have a friend who hopefully can make it here on time. His name is Rico King. He's not a police officer. He's an actor, a filmmaker, a philanthropist, and currently he's filming a documentary on gangs in Toronto. He's from Houston, Texas, and Baltimore, Maryland, and what he will present to you is unbelievable. And I don't want to take any more stuff from him, but the benefit of having a kind of a smaller audience like this is we can actually have a real conversation. We've had town halls as big as 90 plus people, and it just becomes really weird to work in that space. But here the idea and the focus and the vision I want you to have for this particular event is, as much as we present the framework, it's just to explain to you why we're going to be doing what we want to do down the road. And it's just to provide you the education and the insight to say, okay, I can kind of understand why the police and all the other organizations that we work with are doing what we're doing. And then the most important part is to get your feedback for your particular community to say, well, what's going to work here, what's not going to work here. A lot of the insights we've gained from communities is tremendous. It helps us on a bigger scale. I don't want you to think that what you say here is just going to be said to us and we're going to walk away and leave, nothing's going to happen. At the end of this, our team is going to prepare a recommendations report, and that recommendations report not only does go back to the Toronto Police Service, but it goes back to the City of Toronto and all our partner organizations to say, hey, this is kind of what we've learned in the space of guns, gangs, drugs, neighborhoods, and how to stop this from happening in the first place. So that being said, I've already spoke to some of you. I always try to make it a point to talk to everybody. I never had a chance to. We've already spoke before, many times I believe now at this point. But for everybody else, if you're comfortable with it, what I just ask is, obviously you guys have been around before, some familiar faces. If you don't mind, just you can introduce yourself, kind of where you're from and kind of what brought you here today. So thank you. The reason we do that with the smaller groups is it's to understand perspective here, as well as for us, it's to draw on insights. It's to understand where everybody's coming from, because even though we're looking and we're dealing with the same problem, look at the room here. We have different people from different areas. We have different age categories, but we're all impacted. We all care about something that's happening. We either care because we feel bad about something, we care because we're involved in something, we care because somebody we know got hurt. There's some level that you care, but at the core of all of that is the same thing. And that's what we're here for. So to give you background to kind of where this came from, behind me, that's a picture of Deputy Chief Jim Raymer. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the policing titles and roles, don't worry about it. I still don't understand half of them. They're just fancy titles to me with more pay. But I want you to think of this. Walmart. Everybody knows what Walmart is, right? It's a pretty big organization. It's a huge, they're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Well, Walmart has a CEO. And that CEO in policing is the chief of police. So they run everything. And underneath that CEO are vice presidents. There's 4 of them in Toronto Police. And those 4 vice presidents are called deputy chiefs. Well, one of our vice presidents is behind me. That's Jim Raymer. And he's the vice president of a special part of policing called Specialized Operations Command. And all that means is all the stuff like, or where we go and we arrest drug dealers and we do these major projects for guns and gangs and people who do bank robberies, and we do all the other real undercover stuff, comes out of that command. And 3.5 years ago, he'd come down to the gun and gang office and he found Jason. And he said to Jason, he says, listen, every year for the last 15 years, we've run major projects, and I'm sure you've seen them in the newspaper, right? It's when all of a sudden you'll see 5 o'clock in the morning, hundreds of police officers all over Ontario do all these search warrants, arrest hundreds of people, seize hundreds of guns, millions of dollars, a whole bunch of drugs, and we lay thousands of charges. And every year we've been doing that for the last 15 years. But here's the problem. The problem is we are not catching up to the growth of gang violence. You'd think if that were to be the best way to do things, that the numbers of gang violence, the number of gangs that we have in the city would shrink. In fact, that's not happening. They're slowly growing to a rate that we can't catch them. So the thought that Deputy Raymer has was, well, how do we get a gang member out of a gang? And after we spoke to Jason and I spoke. I used to work at Guns and Gangs, and I decided, yeah, this is something 100% I want to get into. This makes sense, and it's a space that we learned very quickly nobody in the world has really got heavily engaged in to complete a full wraparound to how do you actually get a gang member out of a gang. And we'll go through that here today and get your insights into it to figure it out. So after we had that conversation, we said, all right, we're going to figure this out. We did a lot of different things. And some of the things that we did is we had to do what's called a basic problem assessment, all right? So from like an operational lens, and don't even think about this as policing. Let's think about this as business, all right? So he's the vice president of Walmart, and he goes, listen, we want to figure out this new problem. We want to get a gang member out of a gang. And the first thing we had to do as a business, we had to say, okay, well, what are the problems we're going to deal with when we look at as an organization to deal with a gang member out of a gang? Well, there's three things we really got to pay attention to first. And they're all behind me, and they're nice and simple, right? Well, what exactly is a gang? Where do we go? And who is a gang member? Right? Those are all essential questions to ask. So if I were to ask you here, what is a gang to you, what would you say? Like, we're going to put a definition to it. This is either Urban Dictionary or Wikipedia or Encyclopedia, whatever you. So if I ask you what's a gang, what would you say a gang is? A group of people. Fantastic, right? Everybody's agreeing with that? Yeah, that's cool. Makes sense. Yeah, a group of people. And what else? So look at us today. We're a group of people in this room.
We have access to guns.
Access to weapons, right? Guns. So for us, we're a group of people, which is bang on. We have access to guns because there's officers in the back with guns. Well, are we a gang? No, we're not. Right? So not that kind. So what is that kind of gang?
Illegal operations.
Legal operations. So illegal operations, like criminal groups, right? So we're a group of people, criminal groups, access to weapons. Well, this is the first thing that, yes, sir.
It's going to be the great organization and hierarchy.
Oh, so structure, organization, hierarchy is what he said. So there's going to be some leaders, some followers, some up-and-comers, almost another organization, right? So, and the reason we have to look at what is a gang is because we really have to be objective. And what objective really means is this. There's subjective and objective, right? Subjective means that if I were to look at my policing career and I were to look at just from my eyes, well, what is a gang? The real problem we had when we looked into finding a definition for it is, from policing, I could tell you what a gang is to police. But if I were to go to a school, and ask school, what's a gang to you? It's not the same. And if I were to go to jails, it's not the same. And if you go to community members, it's not the same. And the real issue we had with the definition of gang is the reason why there's no universally accepted definition of a gang in courts all over the world is because gangs impact so many groups at so many different levels that it would be almost ignorant and naive to say this is one definition for what a gang is globally across the board. But with us, we had to be very clear as to who we're looking for. And when we looked at, well, what is a gang? These are the three things that we came across all over the world. And this isn't stuff we made up. We looked at academic publications being, who are the experts in the field? Who are the PhDs? Who are the people who spent their life studying gangs all over the world, and what are the commonalities? And what they found were the commonalities are behind me, all right? And this is just research. And this, in combination with our own experiences, is called evidence-based. And what evidence-based means is, where is the objective, the unemotional side of it that looks at things and says, okay, what are the things I'm looking at here? Let's put that on one side being the academic publications. And then the other part to evidence-based, which a lot of times gets forgotten, is, well, what's the actual experience side? So you want to combine both what books say, but also what your experience tells you. And we found that to match up 100% with this from the law enforcement lens. So when we're looking at gangs, in particular certain areas of the city, we have to be very clear that we're not looking at a group of people in a gang impacted area and automatically we put a label to them and say these people in this area are a gang just because they're a group of people in a gang area. It's not true. Unless these three things exist, being that they're in there to control a territory, collect debt, and deal drugs, we're not 100% sure what it is. Right? Now, it's not to say that gangs just do these three things. They do many other things, but there's some tie-in to one of these three things. So what are the other things that gangs do besides collect money and deal drugs and control an area? What happens in the city on what might feel like an everyday basis? What do you read about in the newspaper?
Drive-by shootings.
Shootings, drive-by shootings, stabbings. What happened today? Kidnapping. And Jamie has an update on the kidnapping. There was a press release that those of you who aren't familiar with it. Jamie, do you mind? Apparently they just did a press release out of the division that's doing the investigation, being 31 Division. That's the information. So we have abductions, drug dealing,
Sex trade.
How's the sex trade? And describe the sex trade for those of us who, or at least in your experience, what you think that is.
Just often young girls getting
Prostituted?
prostituted. Yeah.
So what you said was for those young girls getting prostituted. All right, and gangs do a lot of other things too. They do break and enters. They steal cars. They intimidate people. They do robberies. They do assaults. They do frauds. They're involved in everything. Any crime you could potentially think of, a gang is open to doing as long as it makes money. That's kind of the core purpose of a gang, right? It's to make money. So they're open to every crimes. But for us, we have to have a very surgical lens to who we're looking at, because the last thing we want to do is make the net so big in terms of, again, our perspective and our initial idea was, how do we get a gang member out of a gang? So we need to find what a gang is. So before we engage these groups, we wanted to make sure we're engaging the right group. So that's a gang. But then I'll ask you the second part as well. Where do we go? And kind of how do we end up here? Is anybody familiar with that map behind me or what that is? So that map there, if you look at it, what do you think the orange hotspots are? Gang wars, right? Is that what you think? Is anybody else think anything different from what that map is? Your neighborhood's in that map. High crime. You said gang area. So that map, again, being objective, we didn't want to take a police lens into this. We wanted to take a fair lens into it. That map we came across very early on in our research. And that map is not made by the Toronto Police Service. That map was made by the City of Toronto. That is called it's the city that's been broken down into 140 neighborhoods. That was not done by the police. That was not done by anybody else but the city. And how the city divided up the neighborhoods was through an equity score. And all that means is they looked at a whole bunch of things and they wanted to grade the city based off of neighborhoods to say, well, where are the low equity? And what low equity actually means is where are the places where they're at an unacceptable standard across the board for many things. And how they based this scoring was off of a lot of things, but I'll just tell you a few of them. Number one was, what does the average household look like in terms of how many single parent homes are there and how many complete families are there, being mother and father. It also had to do with what is the average income of the household. It had to do with how many of them were born in another country, how many were born here. What was their access to economic opportunity, being decent paying jobs? What is the access to transit that will take you to economic activity? And what did the community feel like their voice was in the development of their actual neighborhood? And they found 31 neighborhoods that were considered low equitable, but they call them neighborhood improvement areas. And that's the 31 neighborhoods that you see up there highlighted. Now those 31 neighborhood improvement areas, the good news is, as of January this year, they've been pumping millions of dollars worth of resources and programs and investments into your neighborhood and all these other neighborhoods to bring them back to a healthy, equitable score. I don't know what that means, but I know that's what they're doing. And I get emails every day from the City of Toronto that I pump out there. Here's the other crazy part. So we had, okay, well, what is a gang? We kind of know what a gang is, right? It's people control an area, they collect debt, they deal drugs. Where do we go? We found these low equitable neighborhoods. So we looked at this map and we did a side comparison on our own in 2017. And in 2017, we said, well, where are the active gangs, being the gangs that are doing stuff today, not the gangs that were around 30 years ago. Where are the active gangs that are doing stuff today? Where's the violent gang activity happening? And if I were to take that map and this map and put them on top of each other, it's almost the exact same. And that's not a coincidence. There's a direct correlation to what your neighborhood looks like and the level of crime. It's actually called social disorganization. And what it comes down to is that's a theory from the 1940s that just suggests that sometimes your environment matters more than the individual in determining what the behavior is of the person. So, I mean, what are the chances that the 31 neighborhood improvement areas are also the gang hotspots in the city? And in particular right now, Northwest Toronto, this pocket right up here. Right, that's the Rexdale, Jane and Finch, Black Creek and Eglinton community is very impacted by gang violence on a daily basis. And it's been like that for 40 years. So we now know what a gang is. We now know where to go. Well, this part became the most interesting part. As well, who joins gangs? This is a probably 4-year-old kid behind me. This was from an investigation I conducted about 6 years ago, where we had arrested a gang leader with 6 other gang members, 3 loaded firearms, a kilo of cocaine, and $20,000. And we executed a search warrant on his cell phone, being the gang leader. And he was 20-something years old. And I got this picture out of his phone, and this is his kid. And his kid there, what I blurred out is the kid's face, and there's a logo of his gang on the kid's shirt, and he's holding in a couple $1,000s cash. What picture I'm not showing you is the one of this kid holding a extended magazine Glock firearm, the same one the police have with more bullets in it, that he was arrested with. And when I ask you who joins gangs, the reason I show you this picture is this is who joins gangs. This is exactly who joins the gangs. I mean, when you have a 4-year-old who grew up in a gang family, what's the expectation here? What's the real expectation of this kid? Probably slim to none. Right? What is the chances of this kid growing up to be something other than what they already are? It's not really high. Now the question becomes, well, we can't just look at this kid and say, well, that's an actual gang member. We have to describe a gang member. So I'll ask you here, we're going to play a little game, and in the interest of honesty and openness, I ask that you participate as best as you can. And it's going to get uncomfortable at some points, and that's okay. And the reason why it gets uncomfortable is because we have to just get our thoughts out there to correct sometimes our experiences that might be lying to us. Now here's the thing, you might have an experience and it's 100% true to you. However, the thing to catch yourself on is your experience might not be the total truth. So for example, if I were driving my car and I got hit by a yellow car, I can't generally assume that every yellow car is going to hit me going forward. All right, that's the interest of this, is to kind of catch that and say, look, we got to stop that. So let's play a game here. I want you to imagine I have a pill in my pocket and I pull it out and it's a magical pill. And collectively, we're going to figure out this problem. We are going to find a gang member in the next hour. And when we find this gang member, we're going to give them this pill and it's going to change their life. And they live in one of those neighborhood improvement areas. All right, not only is it going to change their life, but they're going to take it, they're going to swallow it, they're going to come up with all these crazy ideas, it's going to work, they're going to be a success story, they're going to leave the most impoverished neighborhood, they're going to be a billionaire, and then most importantly, they're going to come back to where they grew up. And when they come back, they're going to create a whole bunch of jobs. And they're going to be role models for thousands of kids that otherwise would be this kid, heading down that path. And we have the luxury and the privilege of, we can do this, we can solve the problem. So number one, I'll ask you here is, where do we go in the city of Toronto? We got 1 hour. So where do we go? We've got to give me an intersection where we're going to feed this pill to somebody, we're going to change their life. So where's the highest chance for you guys in this room? Where do you think we're going to go? Give me an intersection. Anybody else? Got a couple areas, right? But so we have. Let's go with those three that we had. So just by raise of hands, man. Remember, we're going to change your life, and we only have one pill, so we got to make sure we are in the right area. So hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 hands up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now we got a tie. So I'll just ask anybody here, give me one of those, because now we got half an hour. We're running out of time. We got to be exact with this, right? Time is not on our side. We're going to save a life. We're going to save thousands of lives. So okay, perfect. Now we got half an hour, and I got this pill, and we're going to do this together. We are going to do this. Now you have to help me find this person, because it's a pretty big community, right? It's been pretty impacted, and now we have a half an hour. Now we wasted half an hour saying, where do we go collectively as a team? So half an hour. Let's describe this person we're going to give this pill to. The most basic thing right now is, are they male or female? Male. Everybody good with a male? Highest percentage, right? We're going to go with that. So male. How old are they roughly? 15. Okay, solid. Everybody good with 15? 13? 13 to 15? 13 to 15? So let's go with, I think you're bang on. So let's go 12. Okay, so I think, yes, sir. He said 18 to 25. So we got some, let's do this. Let's go with, okay, we got 12 to 15 or 18 to 25. And now we're down to 20 minutes. So, okay, hands up, 12 to 15. Hands up, 12 to 15. Okay, so how many is that? That's about five, 6 people. And hands up, 18 to 25. Oh man, this is down the pipe. Okay, we're gonna go with 18. We're gonna go with 12 to 15. All right, is that safe? All right, I'm just gonna replay it back, just in the interest of moving this along. Now we're down to 15 minutes. So we got a male, 12 to 15. But Danzig's a big place, so I gotta get a good clothing description. So give me the description of clothing. Hoodie? What color is the hoodie? Gray hoodie, perfect. And is it tight or is it loose? It's baggy gray hoodie. Do they have hat on their head or nothing? Bandanas? Are they a certain color? So a colored branded bandana. Is there a specific color? Black and white. What else? Anything? So are we good with a bandana? Black and white. A do-rag maybe. Maybe the bandana around there. Listen, it's fine. This. We're just playing a game here. Okay, this is not real life. So, okay, we got it. Do-rag, black bandana, gray hoodie. Sorry. Jordans, running shoes, Jordans. Everybody good with Jordans? Right. Or Nikes, Jordans. And then what about pants? What type of pants? Baggy pants? Oh wait, you're saying tight pants? So tight okay, low. We're gonna go low baggy pants. Low baggy pants. What color are the pants? Oh, okay. And then what type of hair do they have? Like we got 10 minutes, so we got to be. Maybe no hair. So maybe like this. Maybe like Jamie. Maybe like Dale when he's clean shaved. Oh, there you go, Dale. Okay, so it looks like this. What about facial hair? Anything on his face? Goatee. Well, 12 to 15, right? Sometimes, man. Sometimes. I don't know. So clean shaven. Do they have any jewelry or tattoos or anything like that? Yeah. Where would the chains? Gold chains. Earrings. Tattoos. We're good with tattoos. I mean, I got a niece. She's 16. She's got a tattoo. All right, she got it when she was 16. So there's that. Okay, perfect. And then this person, do they have anything else like a bag or anything like that? Is it like what do they have?
Like one of those cross bags.
Cross strap.
Those cross straps, so it's tight on you.
Okay, perfect. Is there a brand on it or something I should look for?
It's usually like a Louis Vuitton.
Oh, Louis Vuitton, not Champion, right? Yeah, I've seen Champion.
Too much for this person to have all that stuff on it?
No, listen, we got one.
Or like undercover kind of thing?
I don't know. We got look.
They're looking like a target to me.
We got one pill. Well, we got one pill, so we got to make sure collectively. There's probably about 40 of us here, 50 of us here combined.
Like that at all. I think he's more just casual.
Listen, we got one pill. We got to make sure we give it to the right guy, or right in this case here. So we got that. And then, do they have a cell phone? Absolutely, 2 cell phones. Why would they have 2 cell phones?
One for drugs and one for regular stuff.
So she said one for drugs, one for regular stuff. All right. And then do they have like those? He's got 2 cell phones. I got 2 cell phones. But yeah. Yeah. We got him. Listen. All right. So we're good. We're good there, right? Now, does he have headphones on or anything or earbuds? And is anything on the earbuds or is just in for the sake of being in? Nobody knows, right? So earbuds. So we got a pretty good description, but I'm missing one core element, and we're down to 2 minutes, and we're going to change this person's life. Gold tooth. So now this person, I got a great description here. We have we're in Danzig. We got a Flavor Flav. We got a 12 to 15-year-old male. He's wearing a do-rag. He's got a bandana that's black and white. He's got a gold tooth. He's clean shaven, shaved head. He's got a gray hoodie, a Champion bag, baggy black pants, and Jordans. We're good. As police officers, is that not an amazing description of somebody? I feel so good, but there's one critical element I'm missing right now. What is his skin color? But listen, we got 2 minutes. Black, white, light skinned? So like what type of light skin? Like my light skinned or your light skinned or a Dale light skinned? I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, Dale. Black or white. I know. You don't have to be sorry. That's the point of this. And I'm glad it bothers you.
It's frustrating
Yeah.
to hear all this.
Yeah. So, and it should bother you. And that's exactly the point. So generally speaking, we have to answer this here. Yes, sir. So the reason why I ask you, where do we go and what does this person look like? I never gave you that. You told me. Did I ever tell you where to go? Did I ever tell you what this person looks like? I did this exercise actually at the community police college for the first time with Jamie, and after we did this, we spent 20 minutes figuring it out. And you know what they call me at the end of it? They call me racist. I just said what you told me. That's all I did. And the reason why we do this exercise, and I'll tell you, is to get the garbage out, because it's exactly that, it's garbage. Here's the problem with that, all right? Out of the 30 town halls, it does not matter what the demographic is of the community that we're in. We've had an entire black audience in some of the town halls, and they've given me the exact same description. And when we get to the skin color part, here's the problem, and here's why we do it, and here's why it's frustrating, and it's important to address, is because, look, I gave you guys a magic solution to change thousands of people's lives, But the second I asked you about a skin color, what happened? So, so let me ask you this. So the fact that that's uncomfortable for you, rather than saving thousands of people's lives, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying this is everybody, and this is why we do this. Doesn't matter where you're from. We all do this. Rather than saving thousands of lives, we said we want to save face and not be that person. When in reality, out of the 30 town halls we've done, 27 of them have given me the exact same description. It does not matter who's in the audience. Now here's the problem with that. That's not true. That's not true statistically. That's not true based on what we know. That's not true what's actually happening on the street. And here's the real negatives with not addressing that and bringing that out to say, look, you can think it, but it has to be dumped out there to say, look, you might have had that experience in the past, but that is not the blanket truth. They are not the yellow car. That yellow car is going to hit you, matter. It does not matter. Now, here's the problem with doing that, and this is the importance of the education piece to bring it out there in the open and to get uncomfortable is because, look, we're doing two things terribly wrong when we do that. Number one, you label an entire group. Like right now, when I were to find that kid, how many kids would look like that right now, realistically? A lot, right? How many kids are gang members that look like that? Probably 0.001%. And the problem is if you go into a community like that and you're so quick to label people with that type of attachment to them, you're telling them this is what I expect from you. So when you have this kid here who already goes up in that, it might be on the fence, and every interaction he has, whether it's at school or with the police or community housing or employment agencies, every perspective is you're a gang member. What is the likelihood of anything else other than that happening on a global scale? Very limited to none. So we need to get absolutely uncomfortable and get the garbage out there. Now here's the other part that's very important to that, and probably more important is if our entire lens is focused on black kids in gangs impact everybody. There are brown gangs, there are Latino gangs, there are white gangs, there are African gangs, there are Caribbean gangs, there are orange gangs, purple gangs. It does not matter. Gangs are equal opportunity. They're everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're low income or high income. They're everywhere. And if we're just over servicing one demographic, what are we doing in the process to everybody else who's suffering and going through the same thing? What we've done to, for example, the Middle Eastern population or the South Asian population or the Vietnamese and Chinese population that are going through the same things. They're just discarded. We act like it's not even a problem there. And when we don't acknowledge that this problem is on a global scale, what does it become? It becomes us versus them. It becomes very divisive, and that is absolutely against what we're looking to do. We know for a fact that's not the truth. We know for a fact that people think like this, and we know for a fact it's okay. It's not a big deal. All right, it's not a big deal. The point is we're comfortable and we're adults and we're talking about it in the interest of what? Finding a solution. So thank you for participating. Thank you for getting mad at that. And now we need to keep that scope really wide open. But when it comes down to actually who joins a gang, we found another objective way. And the objective way is very simple, and you're going to look at it and it's going to make sense to you. So number one, we know what a gang is. Deal drugs, controls the territory, collects debt. We know why we're in your neighborhood. We know why we're in the 31 different neighborhoods to hear what's happening. And the reason we're here is it's really to gather insight to say what's actually happening here for you. We've traveled east and west throughout the city, north and south, and I'll tell you this, no two neighborhoods have been the same at all. Each neighborhood is different, and unfortunately, major cities all over the world, they want to blanket strategies to solve a citywide problem. It's not a city problem, it's a neighborhood problem. We have to isolate it down to something workable and something we can actually look at and deal with. So we know we know what a gang is, we know why we're here. Now here's the other part. Well, who joins a gang? You were given those laminated cards when you came in. Those laminated cards are called gang risk factors. And in 2007, Public Safety Canada produced these gang risk factors, and what they said is they looked at gangs all over the world. Again, it was academics and PhDs and people that are not police officers, and they looked at gangs all over the world and they said, look, what are the commonalities in people who become a gang member? And they found 36 risk factors split up into 5 different categories, and they're listed there in front of you. And if you look at those risk factors, I want you to think of it like this. Imagine there's a little box on the side. Each of those boxes, the more of those boxes you check off, the more likely is the person is to become a gang member. And that's not to say that if you check off all those boxes, you are a gang member. It's just saying if we don't know what we're looking at, and if we don't know what the real problems are, well, what is the expectation of a healthy outcome? It's probably limited to none. Now, those risk factors, the only way to combat them is with what's called a protective factor. So it's something that mitigates them or something that cancels it out. So for example, if you're hungry, what do? You eat something, right? If you're cold, what do? You put clothes on. Now what's happening is these guys and girls are going through all these risk factors, but they're not eating and they're not putting clothes on. So they're just unhealthy people. And in some cases they die. And that's really what we're looking at. So we have these objective risk factors. Now these risk factors, if you look at any of them, one of the biggest things that popped up in our head was when we looked at that and we said, okay, how do we attack this problem? And the problem isn't gangs. The problem we're attacking is gang violence as the police. Right? That's what we have to stop. So all across the board, in the hundreds of publications we've read and the hundreds and thousands of people we've spoken to about this over the last 3.5 years, we wanted to find an answer. And what we realized, if you look at those risk factors, realistically, with the exception of community, the community group, none of those have to do with the police. None of them. And the realization there was to say, look, we are not the answer to kids becoming gang involved. That's not our space. We're police officers. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. I don't have any background in mental health. Dale is an exception to the rule as a police officer with a background in mental health and youth services. I don't know any of that. So why would I invade a space where there's probably people better suited for it that went to school to focus on that? And the idea was to peel back and say, okay, where's our role? And more importantly, where's everybody else's role? So those risk factors, I'll give you a story, a really basic story that I've seen, or we have seen, I should say, collectively over the last 3 years. And initially, when we had discovered these risk factors, we had also found at the same time a gold model. How to solve this. And the strategy went from how do you get a gang member out of a gang to how do we just stop this from happening in the first place? How do we even stop the gangs from forming in the first place? Because that's where the research said to go. And when we listen to it, it makes complete sense. And I'll get to what it makes sense for. But what we did in the last 3 years was we've done a lot of things. And one of those things is we'd gone out and we educated over 2,000 frontline police officers over 6 months, myself and Jay, who's outside, or there he is. We'd gone out and we spent 6 months speaking to over 2,000 officers every day, and we educated them on a 20-minute crash course to these are the risk factors. And after we taught them to them, we said, look, in the course of your duties, so when you're out there and you're patrolling, if you come across a kid or a family, or you have a relationship with somebody, because you run many community programs like Dale, and you can pop the bug in there that if you can identify these risk factors that they're on the path to gang involvement or they are a gang member, and you can kind of motivate them and say, look, do you want to get out of a gang? Call us and let us know. And within the first week, we already had a few people referred to us, and as it went on, we kept dealing with them up until about a year ago because we had no success. We dealt with over 70 gang members, and we had success with one, and he was 12 years old. And in his credit, he would have got out anyways. All right, it was going to happen. We just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And in all of those, the same commonalities pop up, and this is echoed in the research as well from 2015. And I'll give you a story of one which is, and this is crazy for me. This is why it's crazy. It's going to sound like I'm giving you the worst case scenario, and I'm not. What I'm giving you is something we see in the last 70 of them on a regular basis in terms of how complicated it is and how deep-rooted it goes. And I'll tell you about this one, and I'll also give you the biggest things to look out for. So this one kid gets referred to us actually through a community contact. And this kid is probably about in between 15 to 18 years old, and I go to meet him. And I go to meet him through a community contact who says, look, this kid is gang involved. He really wants to get out, and he's stuck. So I go with this community contact. I go to meet this kid, and when I get to his house, it's just crazy. All right, like he's got 4 door locks on there. All 4 get pulled out. He unlocks the door lock. I come in. He locks them all up, and he turns up the volume on his TV, and he goes, listen. He goes, if they know who you are, they're going to kill me. So we sit down. His mom comes into the picture, and his mom is riddled with anxiety. His mom is so afraid that she feels like if she leaves the house, she's going to get assaulted in the hallway. So we sit down and we talk for about 3 or 4 hours, and with some other partners that we bring in from the psychology space and some of our partner groups that this kid and his family are very comfortable with. And his story is one that the research tells, and I'll give you his story as best as I can by protecting him in the process as well. But when he's 3, he's the oldest of a couple kids. His dad is not in the picture. His dad is in another country. Mom moved to the city. She lives in community housing. She's been there for over 20 years. All right, again, he's the oldest. And at the age of 3, mom says, look, this guy is uncontrollable. And that's what you should be looking out for in the age of 3, is a kid who's absolutely uncontrollable. And mom says, look, man, he was always a pain in my butt. There's nothing I could do to help this kid. He just was always his own kid. Now, for those of us here who've ever had a 3-year-old, just by raise of hands, who's had a 3-year-old? Yeah, you have a 3-year-old. So let me ask you this. You're in your house, and you're washing the dishes, and your kid's playing, right? And you can hear them playing. Everything's cool, right? They're playing with their toys, whatever. What happens when they're quiet? They're up to something, right? So that's mom. Mom says, look, He was always up to something. I turn off the water, I go see him, he's always into something. And mom starts yelling at this kid. He's 3. And all of a sudden this kid who's constantly getting yelled at because he's just trying to figure out what's going on, he becomes 6 and he goes to school, and that's where the school risk factor categories go. And the biggest thing to look out for in the school, and for the educators, tell me if I'm wrong if you ever dealt with this, is a kid who is failing school. And I know some people have said in the past, listen, it's Toronto, people don't fail school here, it's Ontario. There's a big difference in passing and succeeding. Okay, this kid passes. And what happens is this kid comes into school at the age of 6, grade 1, and he has no connection to any other kid. He hasn't developed a single healthy relationship in his entire life. So to expect him to come into a school environment and understand how it works and develop pro-social attitudes and know how to make friends and know how to participate, it's non-existent for him. So what happens is teachers get frustrated, man. It's very hard, right? You got 25 other kids you have to deal with. You can't isolate all your resources to the one. It's not fair to the 25. So a teaching assistant comes in, deal with this kid, pulls him aside. That's what you have. And here's the important part is what we know psychologically through brain and behavior is from the age of 0 to 7, all of us operate on what's called a theta wave, which is a state of hypnosis. And all that is we are collecting information in our subconscious. So not even like the conscious mind. And keep in mind, he's 3, he's 6. He doesn't know what he's doing. He knows, but he doesn't know. And he's collecting information, and the information is not to succeed, it's what do I need to do to survive. So he's just paying attention. And really for him, he's already connecting that when I do something bad, mom gives me attention. Then they're in school, when I do something bad, who gives him attention? Teachers, right? And then does more bad things than he gets the isolated one-on-one attention. So then all of a sudden this kid becomes 9 years old, and that's this guy. And at 9 years old, he goes out and he's developed his friends. And I'll tell you how he developed his friends for the first time in his life. And he tells me, his mom tells me, some other information comes out that really corroborates his story, which means he's telling the truth. And mom says, look, when he was 9 years old, this guy was a pain in my butt. 3, 6, 9. I just could not get him out of the house. He was just always on my mind. And mom's got her own issues. All right, she's dealing with her own stuff. She's trying her best. And she says, you know what, at 9, I told this kid, and they live in community housing. They said, look, you got too much energy. You got to go dump your energy. All right, so what does she do? She says, go play. And they're in community housing. And in community housing, where do kids go and play? Go in the lobby, they go in the elevators, they go in the stairwell, they go in the parking lot. There's a park maybe. So this kid's out on his own. Sorry? Everybody complains, right? Yeah. Yeah, so how many, if you've had experience in community housing, is it uncommon to see a 6, 7, 8-year-old on their own playing? It's not uncommon at all. So you speak with a lot of conviction, and I have to challenge you on a lot of the things you said. And the number one challenge is, how do you know any of that is true? So you said a lot, you mentioned a lot of things about teachers and community housing and police officers and white people in rich neighborhoods. And do you see like any part of that being a problem in getting together to figure out a solution? Of course it is. I still remember the exact quote was, there are 2 types of people in Regent Park, condo people and housing people. I still remember, and we don't forget those things, right? And I really like the passion, but the reason why I have to challenge you on it is because we need to really focus on what we actually know versus what we believe. Because if we sit in the world of what we believe, there's never an answer, because generally speaking in that world, it's everybody else's fault. So I'll ask you here, when it comes down to that gang member in particular in Regent Park, what is the responsibility on that person or that person's family, if any, in your opinion? So I'll ask here if in that interest, and I'm glad you said it because you're 100% right, but if that is the way to talk to each other, right now, if there's teachers in this room, community housing, police officers, how many of those do you legitimately think would want to sit down and talk with you in a solution when it's all our fault?
I refuse to have somebody
Yeah, the real thing with that, and we'll get to you in a second, sir, is like this is why I say we got to be focused on solutions and not problems. Reason being is, when we did that exercise before, when I said, okay, you got to describe a gang member, you were very vocal and you're not happy in how this is going. You take offense to it. But then moments later, you said white people in rich neighborhoods don't go through that. Actually, that's not the truth either. And so the reason.
Probably they get away with a lot of stuff that poor people do.
But you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying?
My kids went to a white school.
Okay, but let's talk. Listen, I don't want to digest that too much. But do you think that was caused by discrimination or from behavior?
No, there was a lot of discrimination at that school.
Okay, so
A lot of discrimination.
so long story short, we'll move. So here's the problem. I got a big problem with that. It's racist, number one. And I'll tell you why I think it's racist is, if you're going to paint somebody else as a bad guy because of the color of their skin, You can't raise a flag when somebody does that potentially to you.
I'm painting somebody bad by saying white privilege.
Oh, no, I understand that. What I'm saying is though,
That's an incorrect statement.
okay, and
By
so
painting somebody bad because of white privilege, that's not what that statement means.
please explain it to me then in a way I would understand it better.
I would think that there's different advantages
Sure.
being a certain culture, but that's not painting somebody
No,
bad.
I can understand
It's
that.
a recognition of a reality.
Mhm.
So I think that's dangerous in what you're stating.
No, thank you for providing that insight to it as well. But sir, you wanted to say something.
I just want about 10 seconds just to
No,
say,
sure, you got time.
I haven't seen this presentation before. I was totally engaged on this case study.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to suppress what anybody wants to say.
Yes, sir.
But I would like to get the content, and I hope that we can ask questions after.
Thank-
I'd love it if you could finish.
Thank you so much. So back to this then, sir. Thanks for bringing us back. So this kid, all right, 3 years old, pain in the butt. 6 years old, failed in school, gets isolated. 9 years old, goes out to play on his own in community housing. All right, at 9 years old, when we talk to this kid, I want you to think about that. That kid who has no pro-social skill development already adjusts and connects that poor behavior results in an innate need for attention. And he's already fired and wired these biological connections, and he goes out there. Now I want you to back to you're this 9-year-old kid. You go out there and you're in the wild. All right, we're going to call it a kid in the wild. He comes across another kid that he gets along with. Is this kid less like him or more like him? More like him. So now imagine this: you're that kid, and for the first time, this guy goes out and he finds another kid just like him, who with 3 is uncontrollable, 6 failed school, 9 his mom said you got too much energy, get out of here. And this kid says, oh my God, I found another kid like me. And then they go out and he says, I got another friend around the corner. Next thing you know, we got a little group of kids. All right, and they're just 9. They're 9. And that peer group, at the age of 9, the biggest risk factor to look out for is it's called child delinquency. All right, and what child delinquency is I'll ask here, 2 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds, they're in a neighborhood or they're even at school, and a 9-year-old pushes another 9-year-old and says, hey, give me your lunch money, and they take it and they leave away. What do we call that at the age of 9? Bullying? Bullying, right? Well, the problem with that is, and we got this from an American study and American documentation that's seen here, is if you're over the age of 12 in Canada, that's called a robbery. So child delinquency, what we put to as bullying, is in fact sometimes, in this particular case with all these risk factors, is it's criminal acts being practiced at a young age. And we soften it with the word bullying. In fact, they're showing you what they're going to do, and that's exactly what this kid told me. They started doing small thefts, small robberies, and what happens at the age of 12 as he goes on, and this is the big one, and this is what goes on between 9 to 15. Because at 15, which is where I had him, in and around that area, the biggest indicator in the individual risk factor category is they self-identify as a gang member. You ask them. As police officers, I've asked kids that I've worked with, both in this lens as I'm here to help, and both on the other lens as I'm here to arrest you. And usually when we have them in a private setting, we have a relationship, and I ask them, I said, are you a gang member? They tell me yes, or they tell me no, or they tell me I'm kind of involved, but I'm not really. But I do. But like I grew up with these guys. So in this case here, I asked this guy, I said, are you a gang member? He said, yeah, I'm a gang member. And I asked him, I said, well, what happened between 9 and 15? What happened from being that 9-year-old kid in the neighborhood who went out and make friends and to being now a 15-year-old kid where I'm in your house and you're telling me you're a gang member? What happened? And he tells me a story, and his story, it's going to sound terrible. It is terrible. But unfortunately, it's one of potentially thousands that are happening in the city. And this is his story. So at 9, he becomes friends with this first kid. Right, at 9, they go out, they start doing these bullying things in the neighborhood. And it's not that they really fully understand the scope of what they were doing. It was just, that's what they kind of were conditioned to do. So they go out and they practice this. And then at the age of 12, somebody else in the neighborhood recognized them. And this somebody else in the neighborhood was an older gang member. I don't know what this person's age was. In another case, the older gang member was a 16-year-old recruiting a 12-year-old. In this case here, I don't know the age. But this kid was 12. This older gang member sees this kid and recognizes himself in this kid. So I was that 12-year-old who was uncontrollable at 3, failed school at 6, found my friends at 9, and I see him right here in front of me. What happens is this older gang member finds this guy at 12 years old and gives him some drugs, gives him marijuana. This kid smokes marijuana with the same friend that he first met at 9. So they smoke marijuana together, they start listening to music, and they really get into music. All right, so one of the kids starts to write lyrics, the other kid starts to make music, and then together they start writing songs at the age of 12. And slowly over the course of time, they become really tight and attached to this older gang member. Now this is what happens following that. At the age of 14, as they go on, they start to, without really understanding what's happening, they start to transport small amounts of drugs from point A to point B. When they do that, they get t-shirts from the older gang member who says, this is the gang you belong to. They're gonna include them in YouTube videos. Whenever they film their rap videos, they keep them connected to it, right? They're really taking care of these little kids. And at 14, that same friend he made when he was 9, that same friend he first smoked drugs with at 12, gets murdered in front of him. So he sees his friend gets murdered, and he takes off from the scene. And we have police records that corroborate this. And then at 15, that same older gang member who recruited him gets murdered. And at 15, this guy had made enough of an impact within his localized environment that he got the tap on the shoulder saying, you got to take over the next position in line. There was a study done of a gang in Los Angeles, 300 gang members. What they realized in the study is that only 10% of the gang, or 30 members, were responsible for 100% of the criminal decision making. 100% of the criminal decision making came out of 10% of the gang. The other 270 members, or 90% of the gang, had an average gang membership of 2 to 3 years, and they were generally out by the age of 21. And they all left for personal reasons. And none of them faced any negative repercussions for leaving. So they had been a victim of a crime, they had a friend that was shot and killed, they found a girlfriend or boyfriend, they went away to school or university, their parents moved. Something in their personal life changed for them to leave. And what we did is internally in Toronto Police, we'd gone and we spoke to all our major investigators who run those major projects, the ones who do all our wiretaps and listen on the phone and text messages. We said, hey, is this a number that you would say is fair here? And they all agreed unanimously, yeah, we see the same thing here. So for us, we're not perfect either. Nobody is perfect in this. And the idea of having these conversations is fair. Where are we imperfect and where can we get better? But the idea is to look forward. So with this guy, he kind of crossed that line. And out of the interest of the justice system and for the family of the victim of the crime that he committed or allegedly committed, as much as we feel bad for this kid, he still did it. And he transitioned over to that 10%. And it is not to say that they're not fixable. What we're saying is for them to be the most effectively approached for prevention and intervention, it takes what's called 3 meals and a bed. It means they need to be in a structured environment, being in a jail for most of that 10%, not all of it. Some of that 10% is still savable, but their issues are so deep-rooted that no police officer having a single conversation is going to change that. If it gets to that point, it's too late. The idea is we have to look at this kid and say, well, what happened from 0 to 18? Where were all the impact points? And I'll ask you with this kid in particular that I'm talking about. That's the categories, right? The risk factor categories. 3, 6, 9, 15, 18 up. I want you to think there, all those risk factors. That kid, how many groups of people and organizations and agencies does that person go through before it gets to the point of them pulling the trigger? So at the age of 0, them living in community housing. Ma'am, you mentioned your frustrations. Housing, right? Stigma. Yeah, it's tough to break them, right? So you have this kid who is, first off, let's start with the family environment, right? It's tough. Mom's got her own issues. She's got multiple kids you got to deal with. Right? She doesn't have the support of another spouse or another partner. Her education might not be valued here. She might not have an education. So she's here, right? So you got mom, you have the immediate family, number one. Then after that, you live where they live. Like community housing, we talk about social disorganization. Sometimes your environment is more of a factor than your individual choices in kind of dictating what you're going to end up being. Right? So you have community housing. And then this person becomes 6, and where do they go? Schools, right? And then schools, and sometimes they're after school programs. Sometimes there's social services that come into play. And then at 9, they're out in community housing, and now they're a different problem for community housing. Because now you have kids just loitering around. You have kids just figuring themselves out, right? And what else do? They go to the parks, so they affect parks and rec. They affect the city, because now they're out about in the city. They go to local businesses. Sometimes they might steal from the business. They affect them. And then they become 15 and they're still in school, but now they become self-identified gang member. And in this case, this person got involved in a gang and they committed more gang crimes. Now, what does that do for a community? I'll go into sometimes big businesses, because as much as we engage the low equity and priority neighborhoods, we also engage the franchise neighborhoods for a reason. There's a reason, there's a purpose there. It's because it's what opportunities do we not see? What are the opportunities here that we don't see? Because they know how to make things happen in a different lens that I know. So we really engage them to say, well, what would you do here? If you were to revitalize this community, what would you do in the private sector here? Because they're always ahead of the game, and they come up with some fantastic things. So when I ask them, and I ask the room of higher organizations or people you'd think to be well-to-do, when I say to them in the room, I go, well, who's impacted by gangs here in their everyday life? Nobody puts their hand up. All right, if I were to ask here, who's impacted by gangs, the fact that you're here, you're impacted enough to show up. Now in that room, when I asked that same room, I said, who's impacted by gangs, and they don't put up their hand, my follow-up question is, well, who avoids parts of the city of Toronto because they fear that there's gang violence? And they all put up their hand. Right? And the point is we're all impacted, we're all affected, so we all have an equal buy-in to figure out what the solution is. And the reason why we do that is to paint the idea of a bigger picture here, all right? Gangs also impact your income, they also impact your local economy, they impact the growth of businesses. One of my favorite examples, and it's not true for Regent Park because Regent Park is a unique neighborhood because you're in the downtown core, but if you go to places like Rexdale, for example, one of the questions I ask the community is, well, and the reason why I bring that up, and it's totally in line with what you said, is there's one in Rexdale, and it's by Humber College, all right, and it's there, so it's catering to a student population. But the bigger reason with that is nothing against. So the reason why I bring that up is when we're talking to these young kids, 3, 6, 9, 15, 18, that are going on this path, and you tell them things like, you could be a doctor, you could be an astronaut, you could be a physicist, you could do whatever you want. What makes those type of areas very interesting for me, and in our observation of now talking to over 1,500 community members and being embedded in different ways in different neighborhoods, is if they don't even see something like, what is the expectation they're going to achieve any of those goals? If they don't even see it, what is the expectation, right? And if you look at your window, you don't see that. And here's why. They pay well, they're a global organization, they pay for your school, you can move up the corporate chain, you can move around. They're a great job to have, and it's a coffee company. But if that doesn't even exist, well, we have to start repicturing and re-looking at, well, what is the opportunities that we can present to them that are feasible, or at least how do we get them to areas to see it? Like a lot of the gang members we've dealt with, and for those of you who've had these experiences more in depth like yourself, the most violent ones we've had, they have not been, for the most part, within 5 kilometers of where they live. They do not understand what exists 2 kilometers that way, 2 kilometers that way, because this is it. And if they don't see the outside, that's their entire universe is in this pocket. So a lot of people have said, well, they can go to school and they can get jobs. It's not that easy. It's doable, but we need to adjust to start creating more exposure to isolate the problem as quick as possible, and then open up the educational opportunities and the exploration and showing them things, tangible things to say, look, it's here for you. And when you have somebody who sees that, as much as you can tell them and show them pictures on a phone, unless you physically take them there and they can touch it, it's not real. It just lives up here. So I can picture the entire universe in my head. It's not real, I'm not there. But if I go there, it's a different opportunity. It's a different experience. It's real, it's tangible. I could touch it, taste it, feel it. So that's all he needed to see. He was like, okay, I got it. I see something else. And that's really, for him, it was a vision development thing. All right, so with him, we had to look at that. Now our gang strategy, to get back to that, it expanded from there. We really dropped the idea of getting a gang member out of a gang. We did not have the success we wanted with it. We didn't. The one kid we did have success with, he was gonna find it on his own. All we did is we gave him the blueprint. He wanted to be a basketball player. We got him a book. We were in a library and we were talking to him. We got him a book. His favorite player is LeBron James. And I just said to him, hey man, read this book and do everything he did. That's it. Right? And then why I do that is we had this realization before is I'll ask you, who wants to be a millionaire? I can tell you right now how to do it. To be a millionaire, I tell you exactly how to do it. You find a millionaire, you ask them what they did, and you do everything they did. There's no luck there. If you actually see the effort involved into it, it's crazy. So with this kid, we had to he was looking for the blueprint. We gave it to him in the form of a book, and he's just been doing it. And it's been over 2 years, and he's a model in his school. He's really adopted the role of being a leader. So with us, we got rid of the get a gang member out of gang. It doesn't work for us, and we focused on a couple things. Yes, ma'am. It was as simple as that. And that to me is where the frustration lies in is as much as we get together, as much as we research the space, as much as we talk to people, the solutions are not complicated. They are not complicated. It's investing time into them. It's investing in positive interactions. And it's easy if all of us do it. It's very hard if one group is left to do it by themselves. I didn't even thought of it that way, but you're 100% right. I'm going to steal that from you as well. I call it R&D, man. That's called rob and duplicate. Yeah. So that's right. So that's where it goes. But in this case here, it's exactly what it is. Like we think it's this magical. You got to be like 10 moving parts. No, it's so simple. And Dale will get into the engagement portion of it. It's not that hard, man. The most violent guys we've had. The reason why I think they've been so open to getting out is because they're also very easily influenced. Like, think about it. For a 15-year-old kid to pick up a gun and pull a trigger, that's not somebody making a decision on their own. I'll tell you what, we found a statistic from Montreal and Toronto. 901 gang members were surveyed, and they were asked, when you committed the most violent crime, were you either high or drunk when you did it? And 100% said yes. 100%. So that goes to tell you that they're in their normal state of mind, they don't want to do it, but they feel compelled to do it. And we just reverse and take advantage of the influence that they're looking for, right? And we present it in that way to say, look, I'm here for you, man. And if you want to do it. And the other part to that too is, and it doesn't work for everybody, I have a different approach than Dale might have, and Rico might have, and everybody. For me, I focus on the intensity first. They're intense kids. They're intense, so I can't start here for me. I have to start here. Yeah, so sometimes it's always a worry, so we have to manage risk with that. I don't need to know who you are. I just need to know what's happening. So I probably dealt with 7 or 8 kids that were really heavily gang involved. I have no idea who they are. I don't need to know. I don't need to know. I just need to know what's happening. How can we stop this? How can we pump you in a different direction? So I'm gonna have Dale talk to that a little bit, but I wanna get back to this strategy. So education for us is number 1. All right, staying on top of the books, staying on top of our experiences, always engaging with communities. As Toronto's a massive city, so it's tough, but we wanna not only share what we learn, but then relearn back. So we're constantly in a state of learning, unlearning, learning, unlearning. You wanna stay in that agile environment, a real fluid environment. But then we have 3 other pillars. So education is number 1. And the statistics and all the evidence said, look, the other thing you need to include is this, prevention. So how do we stop that kid from 0 to 9 from getting into that gang? And we have strategies that we found that really work, but in order for them to work the most effective, they have to be implemented from the age of 0 to 9 and impact those risk factor categories. And after prevention is intervention. And it says gang prevention task force because that's the ultimate goal, is we want to get to 0 to 9. But we can't negate the thousands of potential gang members that are in the justice system right now. We did a gap analysis, which is we looked at all the social services in 3 neighborhoods in Northwest Toronto and 1 in the East End. And what we had found was if you are an 18-year-old male getting out of jail, there's no services for you. You're on your own. Good luck. You can't do that with especially the target population we're looking at. We're looking at gang members getting out of jail, smarter, more experienced, potentially not adopting to whatever rehabilitation was in there, and then they're continuing to recruit kids. So we need to implement intervention strategies. And the very last part is 15 and up for us, so it's suppression. We never hide it. That 10% of violent gang members, we're gonna do our job, and this is where police lie. This is the only place really for police to be the kings at and queens. It's here. It's to say when they're shooting up the neighborhoods, they're kidnapping 14-year-olds like are happening, we have to catch them. That's the number 1 way to combat it. But everything else, we might be part of the conversation, but we're not the lead agency. We don't know how to do it. So who are the lead agencies? And how does this work? Well, it's a bit bigger of a picture, right? And it's a bit of a different picture, but we've liaised with about 40 different government agencies in Toronto, horizontally being the City of Toronto, community housing, a whole bunch of social service groups. I'm gonna draw a blank on all, there's so many. And then vertically, we've liaised with the Ministry of Corrections being jails, probation and parole, Ministry of Attorney General being prosecution services. And we've all got on board and said, look, where do we sit on this? Like who's the leader in this particular space? But what we've been learning in the town halls is there's a tremendous importance to communities and families and police driving the empowerment for everybody in between. Driving the empowerment for, and I'll give it to you this way. I want you to think of gangs as a sandwich, all right? And the bottom piece of bread is the families that they come from. They all got to come from somewhere. They don't just magically pop out of air. So the bottom piece of bread is the families, and in between there you have all these ingredients. All right, and some of those ingredients are schools, some are social services, some is community housing, you have our courts, you have our jails, you have corrections, you have all these people in the middle, and the very top piece of bread is the police. And the reason why I put the family at the bottom and the police at the top of this piece of bread is this, is there's nobody before families, and guess what? There's nobody after the police. There's nobody after us. So we're both stuck. We're all stuck with this. I can't call 912. There is no 912, all right? We have to deal with it. And there is an immense amount of pressure to deal with it. And when we looked at what is the solution to this, how do we actually solve this program or this problem, it's gonna take that collective effort from the beginning, from the family all the way to the police. But the family and the police, we really need to not hold people responsible in the middle, but empower them. How can we support you? How can we